Hey, thank you for joining us today. We are talking about the nations. Beautiful trio of chapters, chapter 9, 10, and 11 of Genesis, really is a shifting from the fourth story of Genesis to the fifth story of Genesis. Let's think about where we've been. We've been in the first narrative, the creation narrative. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? That was the big kickoff. And the crescendo to that story was God made man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And said to them, and blessed them, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it. Right, so that's the first narrative. And from that narrative, we get partnership with God. We are connected to God as his most prized possession, as his most consummate creation, because we are reflections of him. We're like little shadows. That's what the word image means, shadow or statue or likeness. And then the second narrative, we are we come from the first Adam, which is Adam, the first human. Adam means human. Eve means life. So Mr. Human and Mrs. Life bring on mankind. The second narrative is called the fall narrative or the Eden narrative. Eden, which means delight in Hebrew, it's the perfect place. It's where heaven and earth connect. And we are on that high mountain garden where God's presence dwells with man and God walks with man in the cool of the day. And man falls. He chooses to take from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil instead of the tree of life, and chooses to do what's right in their eyes instead of doing what's right in God's eyes. And they're banished from Eden, kicked out of the garden. Narrative number 3, Cain and Abel. Chapter 4, we are introduced to sin, a first mention of sin, and God invites Cain into awareness. Sin's crouching at the door. You must rule over it, or it will master you, or it'll rule over you. Cain makes the wrong choice and gives way. He was not willing to accept awareness, but instead did what was right in his eyes and took the life of his brother. Narrative number 4 is the narrative of the flood. Starts out with the sons of God coming down and marrying the daughters of men, and or having sex with the daughters of men. And they create the Nephilim, these half-human, half-spiritual beings that become mighty warriors. The Gibborim is the word for mighty warriors. And we're going to see them all the way through the text. We get to see another one in the passage today. And then it talks about the fall, that everyone did what was right in their own eyes. No, that it says, verse 5 of chapter 6, that mankind did, that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart were only evil all the time. So we have a spiritual rebellion, a human rebellion, which leads to mass destruction. The world is being ruined by mankind. God accelerates that ruin and brings destruction to the world through the flood. He brings judgment. But he has mercy on a remnant, the family of Noah. We've been looking at that for a few weeks. Now we come to the place where we're going to just do we're going to do the last little part of the story of Noah. And we're going to move into the story of the nations. So chapter 9 transitions with Noah's children, Noah's fall, and then the table of nations in chapter 10, and then the Tower of Babel in chapter 11. That's where we are. That's where we're going this week. So just kind of right off the bat, let's talk about the origin of the nations. In Genesis chapter 9, now I want to point out something. We've been talking about our 5 rules of the road, right? The Bible is written for me, but not to me. The Bible is a library of different literary genres. The Bible is to be read in context, ancient, situational, biblical. The Bible must be read from a perspective of language with a focus on words. Repeated words create repeated patterns that start in Genesis and run all the way through. And then number 5, the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. How'd you do? Did you sing right along with me? I hope so. So here's just, we're just going to touch down a little bit on this first point. 3 things we'll do all week. We're talking about the origin of the nations, the sin and division of the nations, and lastly, the hope of the nations. These 3 chapters all talk about the nations. So verse 18 says, the sons of Noah, reading out of the good book right here, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These were the 3 sons of Noah. And from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Wink, wink. So we have kind of a hint right here about what will happen in chapters 10 and 11, and specifically 11. In that, we've got this origin of the nations. We look at, we need to recognize something, that chapters 9, 10, and 11 are not in chronological order. It's not like this happened, and this happened, and this happened. In fact, he's telling us, wink, these guys are going to be scattered all over the world, but not yet, right? Not yet. It's just, that's future. And then we get to chapter 10, verse 1. Look what it says. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. And then Japheth is there about 2 through 5. And then the sons of Ham are there through 6 through 20. And then Shem, or the Shemites, are there 21 through 21 through 32. So it kind of breaks those down. And so look at this. Chapter 10 is called the Table of the Nations. It's just a genealogy, but genealogies are important because they give us something, right? Until we kind of recognize the rules of the road and how to read Scripture, we just blast through the genealogies and go, well, what's that about? Well, it's about something very important. It's about the seed, right? Remember the blessing? Actually, the curse that God gives the snake in Genesis 3:15. He says to the serpent, I'll put enmity, I'll put hostility between you, snake, serpent, and the woman, between your offspring or seed and her offspring or seed. And he, one of the woman's offspring, will crush or bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. So all throughout the Old Testament, we are looking for the serpent crusher. The serpent crusher, the one whose heel would crush his head. We're looking for that person. And we thought Noah might be that guy. And so the genealogies will show us, all the way back to chapter 4 and 5, they would show us the genealogy, or the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. Are you tracking with me? I hope so. So as we look at this genealogy, we see some things here. We see that after every one of the genealogies, there's a little phrase, and the phrase is this. It says, by their clans, with their nations, each with its own language, from these nations spread all over the earth after the flood. So what did that tell us? It told us that each one of these groups, the different groups of Shem, or the different groups of Japheth, Ham, and Shem, each one has their own language and their own place, their own disbursement. Why is that important? Because it says already in chapter 10 that they have different languages and they're in different places. But look what it says in chapter 11, verse 1. It says, now the whole world had one language and a common speech. Chapter 10 just told me that there was they had their different languages and they're spread all over. Yeah, because it's not in chronological order. Because chapter 11 goes back to like chapter 9, verse 18. It kind of goes back to that. So that's just kind of a critical piece to understand in order to interpret this part correctly. Tomorrow, tune in and we're going to talk more about some things that we can learn from the origin of the nations. What does that tell us about who we are and the world around us? I hope you'll join me. I hope you have a great day. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for tuning in, for watching, for wanting to grow in your walk with Jesus. I am so for you. Much love.